After the blockbuster move to add Tom Brady, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers didn't wait long to hit us with the Avengers Endgame follow-up of off-season transactions by adding Rob Gronkowski. You get it? Because blockbuster movies. I'm hip and young and I make pop culture references. Now you'll have to excuse the background footage. I'm on the NFL's hit list, so whenever I use even a second of footage from NFL games, my videos get claimed almost immediately. You can't claim a computer game though, can you, Roger? Rob Gronkowski coming out of retirement and reuniting with Tom Brady in Tampa Bay is a story that has taken the sports world by surprise. Not because he retired for health reasons and was living his best life post-retirement, also not because the obvious time to unretire was midway through last season as Tom Brady struggled through a drop-prone, oft-injured and generally subpar receiving corps, but rather because Rob Gronkowski was still officially a member of the Patriots. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers parted ways with a 2020 fourth-round selection to add Gronkowski to their already deep tight end position group, as well as receiving a seventh-rounder in return. Relative chump change for a future Hall of Fame 31-year-old who is easily argued to be the greatest player in his position of all time. Now, Gronkowski, of course, famously retired at the highest of highs following a Super Bowl victory in which he was a key part, making a crucial catch on the lone touchdown drive of the game. After 9 seasons in New England, 29 regular season games missed, and heavy speculation throughout the entirety of his final season in New England, Rob Gronkowski retired following the 2018 season, only to return this year in 2020. Now, who knows what exactly they'll get out of Gronkowski, but one thing is for certain, is that the trade we've witnessed is an incredibly rare act in football, rarer than you might realize. And in this video, I'll cover the other famous cases of players being traded out of retirement. The reason you might be unaware of the rarity of a player coming out of retirement for a team other than the one he was under contract with before stepping out of the game is because of Marshawn Lynch. After 6 seasons in Seattle, the final of which was marred in injury problems for him, Marshawn Lynch announced his retirement on the day of Super Bowl 50. And like Gronkowski, Lynch set out an entire season before rumors of his return to football started to grow. Now apparently, the Raiders' decision to move to Las Vegas was good for one thing. It got beast mode back into the NFL, as Lynch wanted to show kids in Oakland a homegrown player suiting up in the silver and black before they left the city. Now, in order to suit up for his hometown Raiders, Lynch first needed to be traded by the Seahawks, which he was in return for a 5th-round selection in the 2018 draft, but the Seahawks also sent a 6th rounder to the Raiders, essentially making the deal a favor to a running back that helped bring a Super Bowl title to Seattle. Lynch did play pretty well in his first season in Oakland, averaging more yards per carry than he did the year Seattle won it all. But let's not overstate it. He was decent, but he didn't set the world alight. Beast mode was not the same as before, considering however that he cost the team only a 5th-round selection and probably earned them a nice amount on jersey sales. The Raiders had to have been happy with the deal, even if they only got 1 solid season out of Lynch before injuries were a problem again. Trading for a player coming out of retirement was a risk for the Raiders, but it also wasn't anything new. They had been right here before. In 2010, former first overall pick, Heisman Trophy winning Carson Palmer, realized something that Joe Burrow will come to realize soon enough. He was never going to win with the Bengals and wanted out. And after a 4-12 season in Cincinnati, Palmer had had enough and requested a trade, which was promptly shut down by ownership. Now, Palmer was desperate and was willing to retire rather than continue playing for the Bengals, or rather was willing to use the threat of retirement to force a trade. In the 2011 draft, the Bengals selected Andy Dalton and Carson Palmer retired. As far as the Bengals were concerned, that was that. They went a conference best 6-2 with Andy Dalton under center, and it was only the injury to the Raiders' starter? Yeah, this says starter, Jason Campbell, that forced the Raiders into a desperate search for a quarterback, a search which took them to Cincinnati. Now, at this point, Carson Palmer was only 7 years into a pretty strong career, had been to 2 Pro Bowls, and had led the league in passing touchdowns in 2005. He had also torn his ACL, and the Bengals really had no reason to move him and knew the Raiders were desperate. Basically, what I'm teeing up here is that Palmer cost the Raiders a lot. The Raiders parted ways with their 2012 first-round pick and a 2013 conditional second-round pick, which could have also turned into another first-rounder if the Raiders had made the AFC Championship game. So to be fair, that was a pretty safe bet. Palmer finished the season 4-5 with the Raiders, leaving them at 8-8 and leaving head coach Hugh Jackson, who just paid big for a player in retirement, without a job. The following season, Palmer played decently enough, threw for over 4,000 yards, but the Raiders went 4-11. Now, the Raiders traded Palmer to the Cardinals for a 6th round 2013 pick and a conditional 2014 selection. That's right, in the same draft that the Bengals used the Raiders' 2nd round pick they got as part of the deal for Palmer, the Raiders used a 6th round pick from the Cardinals they got for the same player. Now, of course, once on the Cardinals, Palmer had multiple great seasons, being named All-Pro in 2015 and almost taking the Cardinals back to the promised land. Now, this list of players who have been traded out of retirement is pretty small, equally small to the list of players that have come out of retirement twice. Now, Marshawn Lynch is on both lists, coming out of retirement once again to play for the Seahawks in 2019, and another player that appears on both lists is probably the most famous example for both of those lists, and that, of course, is no other than Brett Favre. Now, beginning in 2006, the rumour mill was churning out speculation about the future of Brett Favre's career and his likely imminent retirement. However, after the 2006 season, Favre returned for the 2007 season. And after the 2007 season, Favre was all but ready to return for 2008. But with Aaron Rodgers waiting in the wings and a pretty poor playoff record over the last few years to boot, the Packers were getting tired of Brett Favre's back and forth, and they really didn't want him back. Favre retired, and about 23 minutes later he changed his mind and caused the Packers a big headache. He wanted to be released, the Packers wouldn't do that, and after his relationship deteriorated with the Packers, Favre's preferred location was Minnesota, a trade the Packers were never going to make. And after a long off-season, tampering charges filed against the Vikings, and a relationship between a franchise and franchise legend truly ruined, the Packers traded Brett Favre to the Jets. Favre had about as good as a season that you could hope to have playing for the Jets, and then retired. 42 minutes later, he changed his mind, and after being released by the Jets, he was free to sign anywhere he wanted. Favre promptly signed with the Vikings, had an otherworldly season, throwing for over 4,200 yards, 33 touchdowns to only 7 interceptions, but more importantly, he beat the Packers twice. And that's it. As far as I could find, these were the only cases in NFL history, and I looked pretty far back, in which a player retired, returned from retirement to play for another team, but had to be traded by his previous team to allow it. Now, the interesting thing here is that every single one of these players had at least one decent season after returning, and a decent season for Gronkowski usually ended up with a shot at the Lombardi Trophy. I'm not saying the Tampa Bay Buccaneers are guaranteed to be there, but I'll certainly be watching. Now, if you know of any other cases where a player has been traded out of retirement, please leave it in the comments below. I searched far and wide, high and low, and this was all I was able to find. I figured there would be at least 1 or 2 cases I didn't know about before, but I wasn't able to find anything. Maybe one of you out there happens to know of any others. Thanks for watching and stay healthy.